was the god of agriculture and wine. He was mostly affiliated with wine, and I'm going to do my interpretive dance of basically what he did as a god. This is wine. He would give wine. That was supposed to happen. Okay. So he would give wine to the people and would spread basically grapevines everywhere. And I'm going to go through the story of Bacchus and his childhood. And there's two ways he was born, that depending on where he was in Rome and what time period. One was he was born from a thigh of Jupiter after his mother died. So here's the reenactment of that. Actually, this is on type. That was his mother. Then Zeus, wanting to save his son, stuck him in his thigh. And he was born after a short while. The other story of how Bacchus was born was his mother died, or no, his mother did not die, and he was in the underworld. And Hera sent Titans to kill him. The Titans got to him. They basically destroyed everything of him but his heart. So Jupiter, being incredibly smart, decided, why don't someone just eat the heart and give birth to him again? And it worked, and ever since. So here's the reenactment of that. And the Titans, I don't have any Titans, but just pretend there's people here fighting me. And then they rip his heart out, and that's it. And then Zeus just said, eat the heart. And then he was born again by a new mother a second time. Then after that, whenever Bacchus turned older, he was sent to the overworld, the top side of Earth, the part we live in, and he discovered grapevines. And he started to develop a passion for wine. But then Hera struck him with madness because she was always mad at him for no reason. This is the interpretive dance of that. Grapevines. Hera. And then he was mad from then on. Then after that, as Bacchus grew older, even older, into his teenage years and sense of like 1,000 years old for gods, he started, one of the things that they always said about him was that he was incredibly handsome as a god. And that one story was he was pretending to be immortal on a ship, a human sailed ship. And the sailors were so amazed by his handsomeness, they tried to do evil things to him. But Bacchus turned them into dolphins. Mercifully, it said. But he spared the captain because he understood that Bacchus was not to be messed with. So the captain did not get turned into a dolphin. This is the interpretive dance of that. And the rest of them turned into dolphins. But he spared the captain. Then other stories of Bacchus. He also had other stories because he was a direct copy of basically Dionysus in some parts. He also had his own festivals. And I can't really reenact the festivals because they weren't friendly they weren't good. The festivals were gatherings of people that were eventually outlawed due to their messiness in some parts. They would basically gather huge amounts of people and then have a festival. And those were outlawed. At the height of them, originally there was only women who could go to the festivals. Then men were allowed. And then at the height of them, there would be about 5 of them every year. But after a while, the Roman Empire outlawed them only for special occasions. They would be allowed. I would try to reenact that one, but I don't want to get it right up, so. He also had his own cult, which I thought they would just drink wine all day, which they most likely did for their free time, since it was the wine of God. They also participated in horrible crimes, such as ripping animals apart. So here's a reenactment of that. Does anyone want to be an animal?
Okay, I think we'll go with that.
How about some of you be people, and then Mason can be the animal, but don't actually rip them apart.
Oh.
Mason's been ripped apart. All right.
Oh.
So Mason, just everyone come up here who wants to participate in this dance.
Do I get on the camera?
Yes, just pretend to be a deer or something. Make deer sounds. And then just, we'll be the cult of Dionysus. So,
I'm a deer.
Dionysus. Bacchus. For Bacchus. And they would rip animals apart. That's stage. Come on. So,
show where your helmet.
So, Bacchus's cult was also highly illegal, not too surprisingly, because they would commit pretty bad crimes. They were known for committing crimes, usually, ripping apart things kind of crimes. And then he also, there was other stories of him. Some of them, well, he was also, he could turn water into wine, kind of like Jesus who could, or God, I believe I've heard that somewhere. But he could turn water into wine. Bacchus could pick up
I like these.
It was said that he was kind of like a preemptive for Jesus. He was a lot like him in some parts, except for the animal ripping apart thing. But, so he would basically pick up a bottle of wine, bottle of water, and they would turn into wine. And I think the music is a bit too. So that is basically the story of Bacchus. He is also the god of fertility for some people and agriculture, but he's mostly associated with grapes and wine and alcohol, mostly wine though, and that is the story of Bacchus.